So thank you for all joining in this panel. The main idea behind this panel is to understand also how German and Indian blockchain ecosystem can actually collaborate. And as the ecosystem is developing, we are seeing a lot of businesses that are also growing in different aspects. My first question is a very basic question because the people from India are not so much seen quite usually over here, and the Bitcoin ecosystem and the legal issues regarding Bitcoin we always discuss in Germany. But we are not aware about what is the ecosystem currently in India. Many people are still struggling to find out because I'm coming from India, I have some bitcoins in India. I do not know what is the legal status of holding that in India. Shalini is coming from a legal background, and Shalini is, I would also like to give a brief introduction about Shalini. She is a partner at Kanya & Co. Consultant, okay. She is also managing AC Legal, which is a unique legal consulting service based in London. And she is also the founder of ALMT Legal.
Yeah, that's going back into my past, into my history, but that's okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
So yes, because she has
serial entrepreneur. That was my third
legal
law firm.
entrepreneur.
Yes.
Yeah. And on my right side, I have Suhas. He has a very bright, profile in front of me. He's the founder of Happy EMI. He is also the young global leader of World Economic Forum, the national co-chair of FICCI, and he is also involved in various innovation technology and their development. Thank you, Suhas, for also joining. We have Arvind Sinha on the right side. He is the VP of Financial Services for Atos International. He is based in France and Germany. And on the left, we have Galen Evans. He is the founder of Concrete.io. Is a digital strategy, innovation, and co-creation business startup based in Berlin. Now coming to the question of Shalini, what is the legal status currently we have of Bitcoin in India?
So as a lawyer, I have to start with a disclaimer. This is not my area of expertise. I'm filling in for a colleague who is the expert and who couldn't be here. So whatever I say will not be used against me here or ever. But yeah, so this is actually, I've learned a lot researching all of this. The answer can be very short. All I could end up saying is, well, Bitcoins have not been declared to be either legal or illegal in India. And that would sum it up, pretty much. But it's not as simple as that. Our central bank, which is the Reserve Bank of India, has been weighing in on this issue quite a bit, because as you rightly mentioned, there's already hundreds and thousands of users, or those that are interested in the whole sort of sector. So as with most legislation in India, before a proper law is passed, the Reserve Bank or the various authorities come out with all sorts of consultation papers and so on, and the government has passed a couple of notices. The first notice that was passed was with the view to highlighting the risk, perhaps, for users in this industry, mentioning that there is a risk of loss due to hacking and malware, although it's intended not to be. So it's meant to be internet attack proof, as it were. Also, the government was aiming to warn users that there's no established framework, that the value of this currency hasn't been established and it's not a traditional exchange platform. So that was the first notice that came out by the government in relation to, where does the Bitcoin stand in India. Then a second notification was passed, which basically said, wait a minute, we haven't given approval we don't recognize this, currency, and it's not really coming within the definition of current legislation in India, where, current legislation defines what is currency, what is a digital asset, and so on. So, in effect, you end up with a situation where I think it was a senior officer of the Reserve Bank even referred to it, as a non-fiat cryptocurrency, so it's not really recognized because it doesn't have legal approval by the Indian government. But the proposal is to actually come up with a framework to make it, to recognize it, and to make it legal. And I'm told, according to reports, that it may even be called Lakshmi, which actually, for those who are Indian, will know her as the goddess of wealth.
Great. Okay, thanks Shalini for this wonderful legal introduction. I think in Germany they treat as units of accounts, if I'm not wrong. it's a different connotation. It's very confusing also from a common law background, because we, I think, do not have this concept, and it's a civil law concept, which I believe. And now coming to Galen, thank you for having your wonderful presence over here. I would like to know about Confid.io a bit, and what Confid.io, I think it's between a VC and a startup incubator. Yeah. And if you can give a brief introduction also, that would be great.
Yeah, so we take kind of the approach of a mix of, like me and my co-founder come from strategy consulting and also kind of a bit more of a corporate background. And so we make a mix of doing co-creations with clients, with corporate clients, working with them on primarily blockchain-based businesses, helping them build businesses, build business models around that, as well as also building and incubating our own businesses. And so that would take much more of kind of a hands-on role than a traditional VC would, working with some of our own ideas, some of the things that we've seen in the market, and kind of pursuing that and bringing in partners or building our own team internally to grow and build that business.
Okay, thanks, Galen. Now on the right side, I would like to come to Suhas. I read something about Happy EMI, but it's really interesting about how you're using blockchain ecosystem and trying to create another financial industry in India. And I think a lot of business initiatives that have started recently. It will be great, it will be very interesting for a German audience over here, and also this multidisciplinary audience which we have right now, to understand what Happy EMI is doing and how you're using blockchain.
Sure. So we started Happy EMI about approximately 5 months back, and of course earlier than that I was the CEO of Globals. Now I'm its chairman now, and of course one of the inspiration to set up Happy EMI was about a year back. I had the opportunity to meet Alibaba's Jack Ma, and he had come to meet our Prime Minister, and he made a very interesting statement that if banks don't change, then we need to change the banks. And it was completely inspiring, because my previous company was building predictive analytics and enterprise platforms for banks, and his words was very inspiring that if you can't sell fintech to the banks, then you start offering tech fin so that the banks come behind you. And that's exactly what has happened with Happy EMI right now, where I was speaking to my brother who works for FICO in India, and we realized that in India you've got a bureau score like CIBIL, where it's very binary, which means that if at all you go to an Apple store to buy an iPhone, and if your CIBIL score is more than 750, you are instantly considered, of course, you're a good customer, and you're a financial service company who would offer you the financing option that takes about 45 minutes for you to do the KYC. You need to go with a bunch of documents and do it. So I felt that the entire store would know that I'm taking a loan, and especially when you're with your wife or with your date, and if your CIBIL score is less than 750 and they say that, hey, you're rejected because you're 700, that's a very unpleasant experience, especially in the Indian context, where he is getting embarrassed at the store, the merchant loses the loyalty of the store. So the only way is that how do you seamlessly underwrite the risk, and how do you make use of the India stack or the digital infrastructure that exists in India. So if at all I had to start Happy EMI about a year back, I would not have started, but it's because of the Aadhaar that's in India, which is a social security ID. We've deployed biometric dongles in every store. So I could have a consumer who walks into a store, he scans his fingerprint, his KYC is done.
Yes.
And since his social security ID is linked to the bank account, we are able to take his consent to access his bank account, where we scrape his income expense ratio, and we underwrite his risk in 7 minutes, where he could instantly walk out with a loan. And we use alternative data to underwrite the risk, because in India the way banks and financial services were historically adopted is the way they underwrite the risk of a consumer to buy, if it's a mortgage loan or the vehicle loan, it's the same process adopted for a small ticket loan as well. So which is very unfair, and it's also very embarrassing in terms of the customer experience. So we wanted to make it very seamless. So in 7 minutes now we underwrite and he could walk out, and we are able to service the broader set of audience group. Interestingly, former Deutsche Bank CEO, Mr. Anshu Jain, his NBFC in India, which is Incred, is our financing partner, and we got we got few more other of our banks that are actually have partnered with us. So I still remember, the fact that we are able to originate the loan at the point of sale and we underwrite it. So on the blockchain side, we've started to use multi-chain as a private blockchain deployment and exploring with Hyperledger as well. The whole idea is we want to keep those loan information system or the LMS on a blockchain stack right now. It's not in the production environment yet, because as a company we ourselves are 6 months old, but we definitely believe that the blockchain would be a fantastic ecosystem for alternative financing company. If they start adopting blockchain, you could amazingly build those ecosystem where loan information is seamlessly shared across ecosystem and with other partners.
Definitely. That's a great thing, because this is very much needed, and for a long time this kind of bureaucracy in banks and others, they have actually reduced the efficiency in businesses, and I think you rightly pointed out the problems and you're working on that. Mr. Arvind, thanks for having also over here. If you can give a brief background about what your company is actually currently doing on blockchain, because you are a big enterprise, and for when a big giant moves in this kind of digital innovation field, it takes time, but they move massively. If you can give a brief introduction on this, that would be great.
Actually, I'm the Vice President of Financial Services area, and that is where we are. My role primarily is to deploy digital technologies in all the facets of banking, particularly. When I say banking, it is about banking, it is about insurance, it is about capital markets and all these things. Now, we heard about, just the way everybody else started talking about Bitcoins way back, I think about 3-4 years ago. That is when we also woke up, and we thought, okay, Bitcoin, of course, one of the blockchain technologies. What can be the different uses into it? At that point in time, since Bitcoin being a coin, rather being a money, whether it is digital or it is physical money, irrespective of that, but it was related to financial services or financial area. So the first reaction was that, is it that this technology can be used only in the finances? And then we started digging deeper into it. When IoT came in, then Industry 4.0 came in, and then suddenly a new gamut of possibilities sprung up. And now, honestly speaking, we are in such kind of a crossroad where we do not know what to do with it, or how many places can we put our hands into. I'm responsible for financial services, so I know that what are the different areas we can get into. People talked about smart contracts, people talk about cross-border currency transfer and things like that. There are enough implementation which are possible, not just in the corporate banking area, but even in the, he talked about, KYC part immediately, which happens within 7 minutes. So these are some of the possibilities that people here have adopted, but there are infinitely other possibilities which has not yet been tapped, or possibly not yet been thought of. So this is about the financial part. Non-financial part, when we go into the MRT is manufacturing, retail and telecom. And then again, we see that completely new world is getting opened up to us. So at this point in time, we have not yet concretized our approach that what we are going to do, but certainly it is going to go exponentially big. Financial services area, since it is under my control and we are having almost every day daily calls with our clients and customers to write the proof of concepts, because as you know that, for example, if we are talking only about the KYC part, so it is not just that only one entity is going to get affected by it. There has to be national repository, maybe universities to verify your credentials about your educations, then the banks and your own, maybe your employers. All these people have to be brought onto the same platform, and that is huge potential. In India, the people who are aware about India, about 6-7 years ago, the previous government started something known as Aadhaar, which is equivalent to the social security number in the US. And I'm just wondering that if blockchain had been available at that point in time, things would have been much different. Much faster, I would say. It would not have taken about 6 years. It could have been done maybe in a couple of years. Maybe you can corroborate about it.
Probably need to add one thing on that. I mean, it's very interesting that you brought the fact that if blockchain was fusion with Aadhaar, we could have accelerated. And And especially for the benefit of the audience, I would also want to share because earlier to Happy MI, I had a short stint with the Indian government as part of the National Expert Advisory Committee on Innovation and Technology. So, of course, one of our role was on when the demonetization happened. About 80% of the circulated notes was had to be withdrawn, and of course the Prime Minister had announced that okay, we need to go as a cashless India, and India is the only country. I mean, especially if there are entrepreneurs here or consultants who would want to look at blockchain as opportunity in India, it's fantastic because the digital infrastructure is matured. India is the only country in the world where we've completely leapfrogged across China as well, because when demonetization happened, Prime Minister was pushing for people to make payments on mobile phones, and we had the third-party app called Paytm, and where you need to move money from your bank account to the third-party wallet, and you could go to the store and you could scan the QR code to pay it. And in the parliament, somebody made a statement that Paytm means pay to Modi. So, so that's exactly when the Prime Minister actually really took this comment very seriously to ensure that our Central Bank of India could launch unified payment interface, which is UPI 1.0 that was launched. And the whole idea was they wanted to say that okay, we will not charge payment processing fees, because across the world, you know that the MDR that they charge is anywhere between 1% to 2%. So in India, with UPI, they didn't want to charge the MDR at all, which means that as a merchant, I could implement UPI with the Bharat QR code, and you have multiple UPI apps like BMAP or PhonePe, and you simply scan the QR code, and the money in your bank account is automatically debited. And if I have to send money to Arnav, I just need to know his mobile number, that he is linked with his bank account, and I am able to instantly scan his QR code, or I am instantly able to make the payment instantly in a very seamless network. UPI was built as layer above the IMPS. And it's the first time the Prime Minister also felt that since in India not everybody has mobile phones, they also launched the Aadhaar Pay in the month of April with IDFC Bank. So India is the only country in the world where since our fingers are linked to Social Security ID, you could simply walk into any store, scan the biometric. Like my mom can't use a smartphone, she simply has to use a finger and she scans the biometric and she could walk away with the milk in the supermarket. And automatically her bank account is debited. So, so the amount of opportunity that we see with the fusion of Aadhaar and blockchain is massive. Like for example, with the FICCI, we are organizing a blockchain conference in the month of January, and the Maharashtra government wants to put the vehicle registration number on blockchain. So whenever you buy the used car, you know the previous incidents of the car. It could be the accidents, if it's an illegal car, or if anything is manipulated. Because in India, one thing that's very, very important is because of the political dynamics as well, you cannot have your data centralized. So you need to decentralize the data, which gives a massive comfort to, of course, the consumers, and of course, how do you democratize the usage and access to this data? So hopefully India could also implement uploading land records on blockchain, so that we do not have fake property documents, which is one of the bigger issue, which I'm sure Shalini could echo it. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks for taking this topic. Is it working? Okay. So we actually organized one meetup on this real estate and how the German government or German real estate industry can actually develop. Now, actually, you also raised a very pertinent question on the smart contracts, and coming to the question of the relevancy of smart contracts, and I think Galen can be he's in a very good position actually to answer. In the German ecosystem, what we see on daily basis, in the Berlin blockchain ecosystem or in Hamburg blockchain ecosystem, blockchain is not only meant for financial industry, right?
Yes.
And blockchain goes beyond finances, beyond this kind of transaction, beyond this kind of payment system. And in machine economy, that will be a tremendously useful cases. I would like to highlight what you have seen in other industries, the tremendous application of blockchain and the smart contracts, and how you have seen and how you think it will actually develop in coming days.
Yeah, I think there, as far as I would separate a little bit, just in principle, some of the benefits around the smart contract perspective, and then also bringing that into the machine economy side of things. Like I think with the smart contract side of things, we have with blockchain systems the ability to have transactions. Those can be financial transactions, those can be non-financial transactions, and those occur in a decentralized manner. But then by incorporating smart contracts, we can really take this business logic, whatever it is, it can be arbitrary business logic, it can be the rules for a land transfer, it could be the rules for buying the milk at the supermarket. And you can decentralize that and have that so that that is, at the point where you have these transactions, you also have this kind of codified, clear business logic that is open to all the participants. And so that allows you to kind of build these decentralized structures and governance and ecosystems around these type of transactions without having these centralized, basically the middlemen there that are kind of taking a cut out of everything, and also a centralized system that is intermediating transactions. As you get more and more complex transactions, it gets exponentially more complicated. And if you're able to put the business logic in a decentralized manner, it becomes much less exponentially difficult. And then on the other side, I think that same concept can be applied in the machine economy with a beneficial, I guess, kind of interesting twist, is in a blockchain system, it doesn't matter if you're a person or a computer. You have your identity on the blockchain, and a computer and a machine can be a first-order entity or a first-order citizen on a blockchain system and can engage in transactions with other people or other machines on a blockchain system in the same way that you or I could engage with transactions in a store. Instead of currently, if you want to do that, you generally have, you could have a Visa card, you could do it, but then it has to have this intermediary kind of third party that handles the transaction, and you're not directly as a machine engaging in a transaction with another one. And I think you have examples of that in let's take the automotive or mobility space. If you have an autonomous car going along and you have an autonomous car and you're out of your car and say you go to the opera and then the car has to go and park, there's no one in the car anymore. It could drive around for the next 3 hours or it could find a parking space, but then generally it's gonna have to pay for the parking space. And you could have kind of a convoluted system there, but the easiest way is in a blockchain system. If the car is enabled with a blockchain wallet and if the parking space is enabled with a blockchain wallet, they can directly, through a smart contract, pay each other, engage in the transaction. And that can happen potentially also in a manufacturing setting and in all number of different types of areas. And as I said, it doesn't have to just be a financial transaction, it can also be information or data.
Definitely. Thanks, Gaten. Now, Shalini, on this aspect, I think I would like to give a brief background. I think 2015 onwards and 14 onwards, the government of India started talking about smart cities. Smart cities, I do not know how smart they really are because they are being run by codes and other things, and there are a lot of hacking issues that comes into play. But when there is smart cities, there are machine economies that is developing in those ecosystems. There are a lot of Internet of Things devices that are operating. And in this case, I think from a legal background, normal paper contract cannot actually help this engagements or these agreements. And here is a huge potential for the smart contracts to develop. I would like to ask Shalini, how does she think about this development of smart contract ecosystem in India, being her long-standing expertise with the Indian legal market?
Okay, first thing I'll say, we'll be out of a job pretty quickly because a smart contract basically, as you know, is sort of, it's self-executing, self-enforcing, self-triggering. And you can even do your own due diligence, perhaps, program that all in. So I'm not really very happy about this development. Again, I guess the good news so far is there's still no law on this area. We do have an Indian Contract Act that is dating back to 1872, okay? And that's not a mistake. So the 19th Century Contract Act in India dictates when a contract is valid and legal. And as of now, on a reading of the requirements of a valid contract, offer, acceptance, consideration, if all of those are present, even in a smart contract, even if it's doing its own thing itself, then this legislation should cover that type of document and that type of transaction. I think the problem which the Indian government is going to have to grapple with and the legal community is looking at is, okay, the smart contract, a bit like smart cities, whatever it means, it'll mean different things to different people probably. But if it does come into vogue, won't be so much the problem is around it. And I think Suhas sort of talked about it a little bit, about it's not just the contract. In India, for example, if you want to, bring a document in as evidence in a court of law, it has to be registered and stamped. You may have stamp duty, requirements if you're talking about property documents. So now the question is, does every regulatory authority become part of this whole blockchain network? It sort of makes it almost, it takes away the whole reason for this, setup. So I think that's going to be the issue really, is how do you deal with all the ancillary requirements around a valid contract in this new setup?
Thanks for explaining this. I think a very interesting part which Suhas also mentioned, the FICI's involvement in blockchain and other ecosystem. And I think FICI is very much active in various other business activities like digital innovation and those things. On the other hand, in Germany, we have a lot of German-based ecosystem. We have Bundesverband Blockchain, which is a German association for promoting blockchain into German government ecosystem. Is FICI also doing something like that to actually mobilize its policymakers and the decision makers to think about blockchain and how they can implement it into their businesses or the day-to-day regulatory activities?
Yeah, so that's exactly why we have this conference where for the first time we've called the policymakers bureaucrats, and we're inviting startups and innovators to set up the demo parts to show that the applications that could be applied on the blockchain, which could be realistic for the Indian context, like for example, across Maharashtra, and if a FICI wanted to speak to the commissioner who's in charge for surface transport, the whole idea is Uber has already made a massive impact and has disrupted our auto rickshaws, so the tuk-tuks and as well as the taxis. So the Maharashtra government wants to revive them. So that's exactly why they're also exploring that. Is there any way you could implement a blockchain for a shared economy infrastructure? So which means that if there is no middleman at all, like Uber or Ola, so the whole idea is as soon as I complete my ride in one of the taxis, the payment automatically would go to maybe its driver. So you do not need somebody as an aggregator in between.
No, definitely, I understand.
Regulate
Yes.
this. So we've got multiple applications that they're exploring, and I particularly see there's a massive opportunity on blockchain on smart governance side, as mentioned by Shalini, that it unfortunately in blockchain it's not that I alone cannot say that I'll implement blockchain in my own organization. It's a whole ecosystem that has to change.
Yes.
So that's exactly why FICI is mobilizing policymakers. Of course, first thing is to educate them, to build awareness. And at the same time, we would also experience there's a massive talent gap that we would face. Like you need blockchain consultants everywhere. How do you skill and how do you reskill them? So that's the skilling is also one of the areas that we're looking at.
Definitely.
That how do we involve the ecosystem partners like the university, and we are planning to roll out some of the pilot applications. And since FICI works with 250,000 members across verticals, and we want to make sure that our member base across verticals, it could be pharmacy, it could be life sciences, healthcare, we're able to implement. So we are inviting all the hospital owners, because in India, whenever you go to any hospital, you will have to register, you will have to buy the ID card, you will have to have a file of that hospital. Imagine if all of them was on a blockchain stack. Is there any way you could make your health record interoperable across hospitals that makes it more seamless? And is there any way in future you could also have insurance companies that you are able to plug into it?
Thanks to us, this wonderful explanation about how the blockchains are being used by government. And I think Galen would also agree on this aspect. Like Berlin is the hub of actually blockchain. Say it IOTA, say it Ethereum, they develop more or less from Berlin ecosystem, right? And I think there is a gap between these two ecosystems. You are trying to actually doing something in India, but there is a very less string attached to both this ecosystem, because if something has developed over here, why not the startups ecosystem are also coming in contact with each other? And this is actually the main discussion of the panel. There is a lack of actually, as you also told, people are not so aware about blockchain in India also. Yes, you ask about blockchain, the first thing they think about Bitcoin, the second is, oh, its price is around 7,000. The second discussion, okay, when are you buying it? But it is beyond that, it is much beyond, and how the startups which are actually developing can actually collaborate in both these economies. And Mr. Arvind, I would like to ask you on this aspect, how do you think these economies, because you are experienced from Indian background and now you're working in German and French ecosystem, how do you think this initiative of collaborating between two economies can start?
See, this has to happen, and this is happening. As I said, that if we had blockchain about 5-6 years ago, the things in India would have been different. But again, we cannot go back, we cannot turn the clock 6 years back and say that now we have the technology, and therefore we have a solution. So, in today's connected world, there is nothing that happens here is not transmitted all across the globe. I'm not just talking about India. And although, as you mentioned, that today people relate blockchain only to the Bitcoin, but that is not the reality. Just the way we are seeing, I mean, I know quite a few startups in India who are doing fantastic job. The only thing is that they are not getting recognized the way they should. There can be multiple reasons about it, but anything that happens at one corner of the world, it is immediately transmitted at the other corner. And now, as you know, that particularly the job challenges in India, it is getting a bit more scarier, I would say. And the old technologies now has started giving way to the new technology. So people are getting used to, because now Bitcoin has created the, I would say, the excitement in the people that, okay, what is the technology that drives Bitcoin, which is virtual currency, there is no backup, there is no government behind it, only the crowd is controlling the value and things. So that awareness has already arrived. People have started thinking about it. I know multiple people who have started getting trained on the Python and things like that, which is the backbone of the blockchain. And maybe I would say that maybe we are a second behind, but we are not far behind.
Thanks. Thanks for this wonderful, inspiring talks. Shalini, I would like to ask you, this one question is like, I know the law firms because I worked as a lawyer for some time, and there's a huge gap between the startup ecosystem and the legal ecosystem. Legal firms like Kaitan and Co, they are expensive, pretty expensive for startups to approach them. So, and if a startup, maybe for example, German-based startup wants to collaborate with some Indian-based startup, they want the legal counsel support and everything. Is there any kind of special policy which you have internally in Kaitan and other law firms which you know in India that can actually promote this ecosystem collaboration?
Yeah, I think that's sort of an age-old problem, for every lawyer. I don't know if you, in the good old days, lawyers used to wear robes, very long robes, and there used to be a hood that was on the back, of your gown,
Yes.
because the whole ethics was put in whatever coins you want to pay me, subject to what you feel you can afford or you want to pay. Now that hood has slid to the size of the, sort of garment. Yeah, you're right. It's a big problem. Speaking for, the firm that I represent, one major factor is that the firm has been involved very much in the preparation of policies at a legal level that affect startups, policy reforms. So there's a huge awareness of the issues. I think I'd be lying if I said, oh yeah, rock bottom, you're going to get the best price possible. But I think what definitely the firm offers, and other firms I know may follow suit, is to give startups the option, to engage and consult. And sometimes, the fit is perfect and sometimes it's not. But what I've found with startups, I think their attitude, their entrepreneur sort of spirit, leads them, in the right direction. Because especially with India, and as a lawyer, you'll know yourself, a penny, saved at the wrong time can be a pretty expensive deal.
Yes.
So what we tell, and also the innovative ways of agreeing, fee sharing or fees, which don't lumber a startup with, a huge legal cost up front. And the main thing is if you can grow with your client, then, that's the best testament.
Definitely. And I would like to go for the last question.
Probably didn't answer your question like a lawyer.
Yes, it's like a businessman, but definitely. Okay, so now coming to the gate, and I think we are running also short of time, so I would just raise the last question from the panel. You are expert in the German blockchain ecosystem and how the German startup ecosystem is working. Do you think in near future, because I know there are a lot of issues also, German ecosystem is also trying to grow, get developers from outside, get also businesses and adoptees from overseas. Do you think there can be a huge collaboration opportunity? Also, there's another important fact that when you are going to Indian market, you can speak in English and communicate in English. That's one of the biggest advantage. Do you think in near future this two ecosystem in blockchain especially, they can collaborate, and how do you think that can happen?
Yeah, definitely. Like, I think there's kind of three aspects of it. One, as you mentioned before, there's a lot of really the core kind of blockchain development, the core knowledge around the community it's heavily based in Germany, heavily based in Berlin. And I think that's a core knowledge that is useful for India, useful for Germany, and collaborating around that and having exchanges of knowledge around that is quite useful. Like, I think on the other side, as you're saying, within Germany, there's activities within Germany with German corporates and all of that are trying to adopt blockchain solutions, but there's a shortage of talent.
Yes.
And I think that there's a much larger base of talent in India than there is in Germany that could get skilled up on this and could be applicable and could help with some of these initiatives in Germany. And similarly, I think that there's the talent from Germany and the knowledge around the blockchain community that can help in India. And I think especially there, as you were saying before, like with some of the opportunities to kind of leapfrog and kind of do these kind of big, more exponential jumps in India that are rather difficult in Germany or other Western countries, where it can kind of be a bit more slow as far as regulatory change, and a bit more slow as far as large institutional adjustments and all of that. And I think when you have that opportunity for some of those really big applications and those really big use cases that are possible, be it in land registry, be it in some even just the basic commerce aspects of it in India, you can really kind of stretch and go to some of the potential of blockchain that may be a bit difficult to really achieve and reach in the short run in like Germany or some of the other Western European economies.
Okay. Thanks, Galen. Thanks for this wonderful information. And I would also like to thank Galen, Shalini, Suhas, and Arvind for joining this panel. To all, please take a break for 10 minutes. We have some drinks and snacks outside. And please join this discussion again after 10 minutes. And one small disclaimer, please do not bring the glasses inside, because as Deutsche Bank said clearly we should not bring. So please drink out like there and leave it there. Thanks a lot. See you soon.